Early in my life, I was exposed to lessons about the sovereignty of God. I learned about God's gentle guidance and His purposes for our lives. But never have I experienced His sovereignty and His interweaving of people's lives for His purposes like I have in God's story of a little girl named Aura. In 1991, I was working as communication specialist at the Arkansas School for the Deaf. One day, I was working in the office and my coworkers decided to go out to lunch, and surprisingly, I did not go with them. I stayed in the office all alone to catch up on work, and all of a sudden, the phone rang. On the other end was a man named John Pate. He related to me that he had been on a mission trip to Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and while there, working on a dental team, he met a little deaf girl. Well, at the sound of a little deaf girl, I was intrigued. Not only was I married to a deaf man, but my parents are both deaf. John related to me that the little deaf girl that he met was 11 years old and had never been to school. She couldn't read, she couldn't write, she had no formal language. No written language, no spoken language, no sign language. Miraculously, the mother had agreed to allow John to come back to America with this little girl. I asked John at that time, when he got to Little Rock, would he bring her by my office? I'd love to meet her. Several weeks later, that's what happened. In walked Aura, and I met her for the first time. I knew that she didn't have formal language, but she was one bright little girl. She could communicate in her own way. She was enrolled at the School for the Deaf, and by the end of 1991, she became a part of our family, our fifth daughter. She lived with us full-time, went to school, and then went home to Honduras in the summers. Aura continued school, and Ernie and I began to wonder, is that all God had planned, just to bring a little girl into our home who had no language and have her develop language and gain an education? But Ernie's spirit was uneasy about deaf people in Honduras, so he began to go on mission trips with the specific purpose of seeking out deaf people. And God brought along other people who had a passion for deaf Hondurans. And because of that, the School for the Deaf, Ernie's vision, became a reality, and New Life Deaf Ministry was established. Today, Happy Hands School for the Deaf is thriving in Honduras and is the only accredited school for the deaf in the entire country. Every Sunday, between 70 and 100 deaf people come to worship at the deaf church, where a deaf pastor is there and a deaf leadership team is there. Well, Aura graduated from the Arkansas School for the Deaf with honors in 2000, but she felt a strong tugging in her spirit to go back to Honduras and work with deaf people there. In 2004, she married Larry, who is a deaf Honduran, and she became a teacher at the Happy Hands School for the Deaf. She and Larry have a beautiful little daughter, and they love the Lord and continue to serve Him there. I've barely scratched the surface of the story, but it's an amazing story. About 4.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. It comes, it goes, it comes. But I know that when I am tempted to go to a place in my mind that's kind of a dark place, I just reflect on Aura's journey and how God's hand has been on her and how faithful He's been. And I know that His hand is on me. God is no less than faithful to me, to all of us, and I am forever grateful. This is not my story. It's not Aura's story. It's God's story, and it's worth telling.